bit then that we're going to talk about here,
Rubbish.
Michaela,
Yeah.
what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about cellular respiration and the way that the cell uses glucose. Okay? The way the cell uses glucose to build up the ATP from the ATP. This process is called cellular respiration. So what happens when food is broken down in the digestive system? One of the molecules which is separated out from your food is a glucose molecule, or many glucose molecules are separated out from your food. Absorbed into the bloodstream, they travel around the body and they are deposited in cells.
What molecule is it?
Glucose. And that glucose molecule will be used to make ATP inside the mitochondria. So inside the cell, coming through the cell membrane, and you remember we talked about those little phosphorus channels, it comes through the cell membrane and you get into your cells glucose molecules. Okay. Now, glucose molecules are too big, too complicated to be used by the mitochondria to build up the ATP. So they need to be broken down into something called pyruvic acid. Have I pronounced that right? Really sorry. Have I pronounced that right? Pyruvic acid. Yeah. So the glucose molecules are broken down into pyruvic acid, which then can be used by the mitochondria to make ATP and build up ADP.
What's it used by?
It's used inside the mitochondria. Okay? Now, that process of breaking down glucose molecules into pyruvic acid, into the mitochondria, that whole process is called glycolysis. That is the process of breaking down glucose so that it can be used to make ATP. And that glycolysis happens inside the cytoplasm of the cell. And there's various chemical reactions that happen there to change that. Okay? So that's the first thing that you need to know about cellular respiration. The next thing that you need to know about cellular respiration is that it is a process which mostly requires oxygen molecules. Cellular respiration requires oxygen molecules. Because within that process of cellular respiration, the oxygen molecules are used to make ATP. And they make the production of ATP quite efficient.
The oxygen molecules are used.
To make ATP.
T or D?
ATP. And they can make large numbers of ATP. So using oxygen, one molecule of glucose can make 36 or 38 molecules of ATP, which is a very, very efficient way of producing ATP. And that oxygen is required to make enough ATP to keep our body going. If that cellular respiration happens using oxygen, that process is called aerobic respiration. It's called aerobic respiration. If the ATP, the cellular respiration, takes place using oxygen molecules. Yes?
Would it, if it was the oxygen like molecules included, is that when it would be 36 or 38?
Yeah.
Only with the oxygen molecules?
Yeah, that's the number is not so important. What I'm trying to emphasise is that that's an efficient way of doing it. That kind of aerobic respiration produces a lot of ATP, and that is what is needed in order for us to produce enough energy to sustain life and to sustain all of the chemical processes within the body. All right, that's required. So that kind of cellular respiration is used. It uses oxygen, and when it uses oxygen in the breaking down of the bonds and making new bonds, it is called aerobic respiration. And there will be, you will write the formula for that in your assignment, and I'll give you the formula in a minute. However, occasionally, and this is usually when we are very tired, or when our oxygen levels are depleted, and we can't get, we're running out of oxygen, there is, the body can make ATP or can release energy without oxygen. So cellular respiration that happens without oxygen is called anaerobic respiration. So oxygen, with oxygen is aerobic, without oxygen is anaerobic. And during the process of anaerobic respiration, what happens is the pyruvic acid is turned into lactic acid. And in that process of change, some ATP is made, but not very much. So this anaerobic respiration only really happens in human cells, in animal cells, when the cells are quite tired and when the oxygen has been used up. And it can't go on for very long, and it's not very efficient, but it can just give you a little bit of extra energy when you are lacking oxygen. That, interestingly, the build-up of lactic acid that happens as a result of anaerobic respiration, that build-up of lactic acid in the cells in your muscles is what makes your muscles really, really hurt after exercise. You know, if you've exercised really hard and the next day you can't walk down the stairs because you've exercised. That's the build-up of lactic acid in your
What's the lactic thing then? Does it say?
It's just a chemical compound.
It's used in other things.
Lactose. But what that means, you know, I say the names of these molecules and compounds come from the atoms that make them up. So those are the two types of cellular respiration. You do not need to describe them in any detail, but you do need to know the process that happens to that level of information. Sorry, you will need to include this, but it
Can
doesn't.
lactic acid be used, or lactose be used as laxatives? Or is that a similar word that I'm getting?
I think it's lactose is LAC, laxatives is LAX. It's a different sort of it would be a different compound. I don't know what is in lactose, laxatives. It's different, but laxatives are sort of a muscle relaxant type of acid.
Yeah, I think it's quite common, it's like lactate and things
Yes.
like that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that little explanation there.